Greetings, diners and other viewers, and welcome to another edition of the Collapse Cafe here on the Doomstead Diner. And today, cheers. Today, we're doing the second part of the discussion that I had with Irv Mills a couple of weeks ago. And we did the first part, which was on pickle making. All right, and Irv is a certifiable expert in the area of pickle making. So go back and watch that one if you missed it. And today's episode is part 2, and in this one I discuss my personal hobby as far as post-collapse craft skills are concerned, which is candle making. Hey, candles? Nice skull glass. And in case you can't see it, let me just raise it up there. There you go. See? Alright, let's try to keep it in the frame. Move Alaska prop out of the way. So that's going to be today's discussion. And we'll go through the uses, the making of them, and how best to use the heat and the light that a candle gives off so that it's efficient. But before we get started on that, it is today, when I'm recording this intro, right before Hurricane Isaias hits the Florida coast, or skims the Florida coast, in what I call a strafing run of Mother Nature. And you can go back and read my article on that one. I just want to wish all the people along the eastern seaboard the best of luck. Looks like it'll maintain hurricane strength pretty far up the coast into the Virginias. Probably make landfall in South or North Carolina. And then travel further upward to New York, Boston, Maine, and even as far as Nova Scotia, where we have another diner living. But by that time, it will have substantially weakened. And we'll just have to see what kind of devastation it brings. It's going to pass a lot of people in that neighborhood, a very, very densely populated part of the world. So again, I wish them all the best of luck as collapse comes to their doorstep. And now, let's get on with the topic for the day, which is candle making and heat and light sources in the world of collapse.
So anyway, all right. So for the moment, off the topic of food, and I am going to address the topics of heat and light in the post-collapse world. And again, this is in a situation which probably is not going to be on us, at least in the industrialized world, for another couple of years, I don't think. There may be brownouts, there may be rolling blackouts, stuff like that. But I think electricity in general is going to remain available for, good decent amount of time, hopefully until I'm dead. Because I don't want to live without it. Right? But you know, there's skills, developing skills that you can use in a situation where you don't have those mechanisms for making your life easier and more comfortable are good things to do. There's like cooking, like what Herb does, growing his stuff and whatnot. And I wish I could be doing that, but besides being a cripple, I don't have the space to do it, so it's not happening. So a couple of years ago, I got into candle making. And it was more or less the outgrowth of a power outage after the big earthquake that we had. We, we had a 7.0 quake up here in Alaska a couple of years ago, and it really fucked things up for quite a while. It was a mess.
Yeah.
And, I lost heat for a few days and whatnot. And so I have other alternative methods of heating that, other than what I'm going to show here, that are in fact more powerful and better, as long as you've got the stuff to do it. But this is to me the most simple, very easy to learn techniques. And the materials that you need are very simple as well. So let me start with what I started with, which are these guys. Okay, this is a tea light. Okay, and a bag of these, 100 of them, cost me like $6 on sale. Which is 6 cents a candle, and they last about 4 hours, from brand new to burnt down, if you leave them going the whole fucking time. And if you shut them off, if you blow them out, then you reduce that somewhat, because you're going to get waste out of that. Sometimes they won't relight at all. And but either way, there's always some wax, candle wax, left in the bottom. Not a lot, but there's always some. And I'm like, I hate wasting things, especially things that are good collapse things, right? So I decided I was going to try to save these extra bits of wax to make new candles, okay? And so what I would do is melt them and then pour them together into a jar until I had enough to make new candles, okay? And what I used for that is this little deal here, okay? Now, this is not a camp stove or anything like that. This is a toothbrush holder that I picked up at a yard sale for $1. All right. And what I do to make my wax, or to melt the wax, is I take a candle that I've previously been using, or one that I'm currently using. I put it in the middle to heat up the jar, and then on top of it I put another little glass Pyrex. Use Pyrex because otherwise things go bad. Crack your glass and get wax all over the place. Not good. You put that on top of it until the wax melts, and then you pour that wax into another container, and keep doing that over and over again until you have filled up enough wax to make a new candle, and a much bigger one than a tea candle. All right. So now, here is another candle. No, not that one. No, it was that one. Here's a tea candle, commercially purchased. Not a tea candle, it's a jar candle. Commercially purchased, that is scented and really pretty. Okay, very nice, isn't it? All right, and these suckers don't last 8 to 10 hours. All right, and they smell nice too. All right, and so I'll burn through one of these, and then when it's burnt through, I take my old candle wax from the tea lights, all melted down, and I pour it back into the jar. All right, with a wick, which I'll show you in a second. And what I get is something that looks like this. All right, doesn't look a whole lot different from the original, but it doesn't smell like eucalyptus, okay? Because I don't put the eucalyptus scent in. I do have numerous scents that I can drop in these things, and I can color the wax. But why the fuck bother, right? I'm not making candles so they smell good or, anything else. I'm only using them as a source of heat and light, all right? And so this candle is made basically from the used wax or the remaining wax from, a couple of dozen tea lights, probably. And like I said, it fills it up and it costs me nothing. All right, absolutely zero, because I already used the tea lights for one operation, and now it's only the remainder that otherwise would have been thrown out that I'm using as a substrate. And the jar also cost me nothing because it's the remainder from the original jar of stuff that I bought on sale at Walmart for $3. Did not cost me a lot then either. So that got me started, okay? And then I started to think about it and how they made candles in the old days. And candles use a few things. The most basic and common is tallow, otherwise known as rendered fat from animals. Sometimes beef, sometimes pork, and so forth. And that stuff is solid at room temperature or semi-solid. You're not going to make a stand-up candle with that. I'll explain how you do that, but a jar candle, you can make a jar candle with it quite well, just by itself. And here, in this can of tuna, well, what used to be tuna, taco, is saved up bacon fat. All right, this is bacon fat from maybe a month's worth of bacon. I don't know. I don't eat a lot. Might even be 2 months worth, but it's a lot of fucking fat, and it burns great. All right, and if you do make a candle out of it, your place smells like you're cooking bacon all the time. All right, which is good. And then you can stiffen it up. And if you want to make stand-up candles, And this is the shit you use for that. Beeswax. Okay? Now, I don't raise my own bees. I'm not a beekeeper, and I never will be. But a package like this doesn't cost me a lot. It might have cost $10. And I could probably make 50 stand-up candles out of it. Because you don't need a whole lot of beeswax mixed in with the tallow in order to stiffen the candle enough to stand alone. But again, I'm like, why do I need a standalone candle? I don't. They work fine in the jar. They do exactly what I want them to do. So I have about 3 or 4 bags of these, but I'll probably never use them. All right. But you know, if you want to really get into candle making and you want to do it as a sort of little business, you might want to stock up on that. It could help you. And then when you do make your own candles, you need wicks. All right. Now here's commercially purchased wicks. All right. Now these are pre-soaked in wax, and they have little stands on them in the bottom that sink them to the bottom of your jar, and they're very easy to use. You don't need very much expertise to do that. Now, you can make your own wicks, and I have done that. What do you call it? You don't absolutely need that stuff. You can make your own wicks using a paper clip and some twine, or if you grow hemp, ganja, for example, you can weave your own wick from that, and then use a paper clip as a weight and so forth. So the commercial ones aren't absolutely necessary, but they do make life much easier. Just like, you know, Herb buying his onions is quite a bit easier than growing them all yourself. But it can be done. So there's virtually no part of this operation that you have that you can't do in the complete absence of Amazon and electricity and so forth. Oh, and here's another really pretty one that I did. This one's in one of my skull-shaped shot glasses. And I did dye the wax on this one. Dyed it red. And the candle you see burning at the front is in a big skull glass. Okay?
Yep.
For dead people. Ouch. And careful. When you are doing candle making, burning yourself is a reasonably regular occurrence. Can't tell you how many times I've spilled wax on myself, hot wax. And then when you spill it all over the table, it's very bad. The cleanup is time consuming. So there's nothing in making a candle that you cannot get a hold of in a post-collapse situation. Now, what's the utility here? All right. Well, the most obvious one is lighting. Okay? 1 or 2 candles lit up in your place gives you enough light to move around safely, not trip over shit, which for me can be life-threatening, and so forth. You don't need a lot of candles burning to have enough light going. You put one over in this part of the place and one over in that part of the place, and you're good. And then heating. Now, believe it or not, a candle puts out a decent amount of BTUs, almost as much as about a 40 to 50 pound dog does per hour. And so I spent one winter for several days trapped in a snow cave with myself, two other guys, and a dozen dogs. Well, all the dogs were not in the snow cave at the same time. Wasn't enough room. Maybe we had 4 dogs in the cave at a time. We were trapped. It was a big snowstorm. And, it was probably, I don't know, 10F, maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 10 Celsius, somewhere in that range. It was fucking cold out. But inside our snow cave, igloo, whatever you want to call it, we never dropped below freezing at all. And, pretty comfortable. I had to take off some of the gear to stay in there. And when I take 4 candles, just 4, not a whole lot, and put one in each corner of Savannah, which is my stealth van, my escape vehicle, bug out machine, whatever you want to call it. If the temperature is down at 20F outside, it's going to keep the interior of the van above freezing, well above freezing. And I have other ways to heat it too that don't take my big equipment either. And CO2, or carbon monoxide rather, carbon monoxide is CO, and carbon dioxide is CO2. It's not a problem, okay? I mean, the difference barely registers on my carbon monoxide meter when I run 4. So that's not an issue. Now, if I ran that, plus a couple of my lanterns, plus a stove, a Karo stove and so forth, then I might have a CO problem. But I crack a window and it'll be fine. That's that. A lot of people have that concern, and it's valid to have that concern. But I will tell you from experimentation, using the right equipment, that no, you're not going to asphyxiate yourself with that much running. And like I said, it'll keep you warm up to a fairly cold temperature. And I did have a long discussion with a fellow, I can't remember his initials now or what he went by, but a guy who has been living in his van since the 1960s, okay? And he spent 3 years of that in Alaska. And he lived in his van in Alaska through the winter for 3 years. And he was heating with Karo. He never used more than 15 gallons of Karo in any winter. So it's the size of the place, how well insulated it is, and how you use it, and when you use it, that will make the difference in being able to stay warm in a cold climate, which I live in, right? I mean, you don't get a fuck of a lot colder than Alaska. Sometimes North Dakota does, and sometimes Minnesota, sometimes Ontario, do, but not usually. And my area of Alaska, because we're close enough to the coast, we rarely see the super low digit numbers, minus 30, minus 40. We do 2, 3, 4 days a year maybe hit that. They hit it in Fairbanks all the time, but I would never live in fucking Fairbanks. That place is sore. So you can do it on very low amounts of heat and fuel. And so I recommend learning candle making, which is not hard, and practicing it. And then you got another skill, right? Which is good. Every additional skill that you put together for yourself that will assist you as push comes to shove and the shit hits the fan are good ones. Okay, enough about heat and light. Irv, you didn't throw in any questions. You got any questions?
No, I was pretty quiet. Well, I was going to ask you what you use for wicks at one point, but then you answered that, so I didn't have to. I've done a bit of candle making, and a lot of times what I used was, and I may have a roll of it. No, it's too hard to get a hold of, but just plain old cotton string. Butcher cord, they call it sometimes. Makes a pretty good wick, too. Yeah.
Sure, I've
and
got
readily.
that. And twine also. Twine.
Yeah.
I'd make them out of a ball of twine.
I was interested to see your tuna can full of bacon grease. My dear old grandma, the same lady who made the pickles, was born in New Zealand of all places. There's a long story for some time when you've got some time. But anyways, when she was living in New Zealand with her father, her family lived on a sheep ranch. He was a hand there. And she talked about, this would have been about 1890, I guess. They had what they called slush lamps, which was exactly what you were showing there. Just like a saucer or a tin can with grease in it left over from what you've eaten. And all you needed is just a little strip of cloth even. Put it in there, light it, it melts the fat and it gets wicked up and makes a fairly decent flame. People have been doing that for a long time, and it sure isn't hard to do. So I was encouraged to see you doing that. It brought back some memories of stories my grandmother used to tell me. Yeah, it does get occasionally down to about 30 below Fahrenheit here in Ontario. In southern Ontario, of course, it gets lots colder than that in northern Ontario. But that would be, I can remember 2 occasions in 66 years of living here that it got that cold. Most of the time it's more like, well, it wouldn't be below 0 Fahrenheit most of the year, especially since we're living on a large lake here, Lake Huron. And until the lake freezes over, which it doesn't do every year, the open water keeps things fairly open. So my house was built to be heated with electricity, which may sound odd, but I worked for the electric company, so why pay somebody else wages? Better to pay my own. But we had always planned to put in a wood stove, and we built in '82, and in fall of 2018, finally put in the wood stove. And since then, we've been heating with wood primarily, except when we go away somewhere, in which case we let the electric furnace take care of it. But I'm glad I got the wood stove. It answers the need of what are you going to do if there's an extended outage, and the long-term thing of what happens when the grid starts to get pretty shaky as well. We've been very pleased with how the wood heat works, and I would encourage everyone to when you get the chance, and if you've got the money saved up to install a wood stove, it isn't cheap, but it's a good way of heating. And in the meantime, very important to have some candles on hand as well for both heat and light.
Yeah, and lanterns work good too.
Yep.
A lantern will put out about 3 times or 4 times the BTUs of a candle, and I've got about 4 Caro lanterns.
Oh yes,
that I can run. Yeah. And then
I've got a what around here we call a Coleman lantern, which burns white gas, and it has a mantle in it which heats up. It glows white hot. The light it produces is as good as electric light, and it throws off a lot of heat. I have it hanging from a hook in the ceiling of our dining room. People look at that and say, "Well, geez, you work for the electric company. It looks like you don't trust them much." And my answer is, "Yep, you got that right."
Yeah, when you work for somebody, you get to know them.
You get to know what can go wrong. In fact, it was my line of work as a maintenance electrician was exactly that. And there was lots of times when that candle, or not candle, that lantern came in pretty handy for heat and light during even if the outage is only a few hours long. It's nice not to be sitting around in the dark and watching the temperature go down.
Yeah, I this place not pleasant to be in. Like I said, we went after the earthquake. We went through several days where the heat, everything was intermittent, and then another year, my boiler went up, and that had to be replaced. Fine, did it. That was about a week worth of time. Yeah. Did not have power or have gas heat. What I did in that situation, though, was I also have plug-in electric heaters. I have several of them, and so I just used those during that period. And the way to use those efficiently, for me, because I'm a cripple and I don't leave my office chair very much, is I have one under the desk. Okay. Mm-hmm. What I do is I put a blanket over myself, and the output of the one that's under the desk, it goes underneath the blanket. Mm. Okay, so that whole area of my body is being preferentially heated by this one guy, and I mean, I could cook myself that way if I leave it on long enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Usually, I'd only drop it on for half an hour at a time or something like that. So while the rest of the apartment was, pretty cold, my area, my little space, is plenty warm. And then when I go to bed, I have a sleeping bag that's good to 45 below. All right, for my camping years. Motherfucker is so well insulated that nothing's going to get through that. Not in this neighborhood. And so, it was not a problem. No. So, all right. I think that's enough on the heating, lighting, and cooking topic. Oh, just one more comment on the Coleman lanterns. They're good. They do produce a shitload of light. They're very bright and a shitload of heat, too. The problem is these mantles. They're very fragile. And when they bust, you gotta have spares. Right?
Yep.
No way to fix them. So It is a great source of heat and light, but gotta have the mantles, and you can't make
Yep.
one yourself.
No, you can't.
I don't know how you would, but
Yeah.
so do you have a whole bunch of spares?
I have spare mantles, and I've got the spare parts for the pump, uh, the rubber or leather piece that's the guts of the pump, and that kind of thing. Because you're right, there's nothing more frustrating when you've got something you're relying on, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, and you don't have the parts to fix it. So yeah, I got a quite a little stash of stuff to make sure it keeps going.
Prepping up, very important. Prepping up.
It is.